Okay, so I'm Kelly Sullivan Walden. I'm talking with Melanie Murphy, and we'll do like a she said. Like, so Melanie wrote this incredible piece about the whole thought process of what women have to go through when it comes to getting married and changing your name. And it was a
Hmm.
beautiful piece. It's a beautiful essay that you have on Substack, yeah?
Right, right. Yes, I do. Uh-huh.
And I responded with like gangbusters. I had so much to say about this because I was blindsided. So let's start with you and then
Okay.
I'll jump in. So let's be
Okay.
linear a little bit. So
Okay.
tell everyone what your
Yes.
process was in coming to write this piece.
Sure. Yeah. So this subject or topic of married name choices has just really been on my mind for quite a while, and I'm just so curious about it that in this day and age, there's so many people really trying to personalize, especially couples trying to personalize their weddings and really examining the different traditions. Like, you know, do we really want to have all the single women come up on the floor and toss the bouquet? Some women don't want to be singled out, or some women are perfectly content being single and they don't want to catch a bouquet, so kind of looking at those traditions. And maybe I heard one couple wanted to throw a teddy bear to all the kids, because they still kind of liked, that tradition is
Oh,
a little bit, but they wanted to put their own personal spin on it. Or, somebody else told me they really don't like cake. So they had donuts instead, so really trying to personalize their different things. So I found it really curious how 80% of women, according to the Pew Research study, still drop their name and take on the husband's name, which interestingly, back in the 1970s, when Miss Magazine came out and really popularized the prefix MS, instead of MRS and MISS, and really encouraging women to um, consider keeping their maiden names. Even in the 1970s, when there was that wave of feminism, there was probably about 17% of women who actually kept their maiden names. And actually then it dropped in the 1980s and into 90s, and now we're back to like 20%. So I just find it really interesting how this tradition is still so popular in the United States. So I kind of set out to find out why. And the majority of people just say, well, to tell you the truth, never really even thought about it, or it's just the way it is, or um, I didn't know I had other choices. So I just found that really interesting and started talking to people about their thought process and the discussions that they've had as a couple. Um, and now that, same-sex marriages are legalized, kind of looking at when gender is taken out of the equation, when it's two women, two men, two individuals coming together, they have more intentional conversations about what's important to you and what's important to me, maybe the significance of the name, how much of their identity is wrapped up in the name. But when it's still, a male and a female getting married, we still revert back to those really old traditions of head of household, the man being the owner or the master of the property and everything like that. And I think it's just so
mm.
underlying, or so unconscious in us, because we're raised in this society, the men are, the women are, that people just don't even realize why they're doing what they're doing and how much of themselves they may be giving up, or in my opinion, how many opportunities they may be missing to create something new. So that's like
So
my idea
what
behind it.
did you do for you when you got married?
Sure. Yeah, so when I first got married, I was 21, and yep, like everybody else, I just we never even had a conversation. It's just kind of what you did. You get married, you sign the marriage certificate, and so I put down his name instead of my name. And
What
and
was your
then
maiden name, by the way?
my maiden name is Swiger. It's
Okay.
a German name, and now I'm a Murphy. So I went from German to Irish, and then but then when I got in, and you know what the thing was too, at 21, um, it wasn't that difficult. I didn't have a college degree yet. I don't think I had a passport. I think I
Mm.
had one bank account, maybe one credit card, so there wasn't a lot to change. But then 20 years later, when I got remarried, now I've got 3 children, I've got, college degrees, I've got all this other stuff. So when I got married at 40, I kept my name. I kept Murphy. And yeah, and so like I put in the article, and my husband kept his name. So because at that point it was like, you know, I do love the idea of husband and wife having the same name. A lot of people do, you just feel I feel more, united, and the
Hmm.
whole family unit. But it, it's just it can get complicated, because my kids have one name and his kids have another name, and we're bringing them all together. And now like I said, I've got so much more identity wrapped up in Melanie Murphy,
Yeah.
and that's who I
Such
am.
a great name
So
too.
so I do
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah. So is
Yeah.
there any, like, does your husband do any eye rolls about that? Is there any, like, is he disappointed?
Well, as I wrote in the article, that we kind of had a um, discussion around the dinner
The
table
dinner
one night.
table, right? I
Yeah,
love the way
and
you set it up in the article. I could so picture it. I was so in the scene with you.
and yeah, so I just said, hey, you know what, I don't think I'm going to change my name. And and to him, that was the first time that he even thought. But he just assumed, we're getting
Right.
married, I would take his name. And and so I went into the whole, it's complicated and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, if you want, um, how about you take my name? Because there's a lot of choices out there. And the first thing he said was, I don't want to take your ex-husband's name. And I'm like, huh, really think about it that way, because to me, almost my entire adult life since I was 21, I've been Melanie Murphy. So to me, it's my name. It's
Yes.
I can kind of see how he feels that it's wrapped up in my ex-husband's culture and his family and things like that. But at the same time, I was like, but no, this is me. This is my name. So I thought maybe we could, he could be a Murphy too. And so he
Hmm.
just said no. And I thought, you know what? Okay, that's a different way to look at it. And I thought, you know what? You're right. I really don't want to have your ex-wife's name either, because his ex-wife
Right.
didn't change her name. And he just like, what? Because again, he's identifying that family name as
Mm.
a family, his family. And even though his ex-wife still had that name, it's like, well, now she's out of the family. So I like, okay, that's an
Right.
interesting way to look at it. And then I thought, well, how about if we want to, again, kind of throwing out different options, maybe we could go back in my family tree and come up with another name. I said, how about Schultz? That's a big name in my family. And he just like, not German, British, which again, I thought was really interesting, the way how ingrained things are in the way
Right.
that we were raised, because I just automatically dropped my German name and took on an Irish name. And at the time, I didn't even realize I didn't have any Irish in me. So, but all of a
Hmm.
sudden now I'm Irish,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
my kids, I didn't realize, at 21, of course, when I did have kids, and now, their last name is Murphy, how they and the family and their peers and everybody identified them as Irish, so much so that I have three kids and they all got matching shamrocks tattooed on they got them tattooed. And I was kind of like, but you guys, I've always talked to you about your German heritage and sauerkraut and Oktoberfest and dressing up in the lederhosen and the drindle, doing the polka and everything, but they still identified as Irish and not German. So funny little side story on this. So I was upset and I said, all right, guys, you know what? I do not like tattoos, just, I don't know, the whole idea of like having ink, pumped into your butt and like, if I've never liked that. But I said, all right, guys, you know what? If we can come up with a
Mm.
German symbol that, no beer signs or pretzels or anything like that, but a German symbol that we can all agree on, I will get a tattoo with you guys. So yeah, a couple of years ago, we decided on the German national flower, and so yeah, for Mother's Day, they gave me a tattoo.
Where is it? Is it somewhere you
It's
can
on the
show?
back of my calf. Yeah,
On the back of your calf? I want to see it. I don't know how you could do it on your camera.
right. Yeah.
That's
Well, I can
You'd
I
have to
can
be an
tell you this.
acrobat, I guess.
I did write an article for Today magazine
Wow.
about that, how I got a
Oh,
tattoo for Mother's Day, and they have pictures of it on there. So
that's so cute.
you'll have
Okay,
to
you'll
look
have
it
to
up.
put a link to that
Oh yeah.
following
Okay,
this.
that's
Oh,
good.
that's so cool. I got a
Yeah.
tattoo for Mother's Day. That is
Yes. And so
beautiful.
now we all share, our German tattoo.
Oh, that's so
Uh-huh.
cool. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
And you've had kind of an interesting story with your name, your last name. Because I listened to it on
Yeah.
that podcast and she said it was very bougie.
Very bougie. That's true. Stassi Schroeder saying that. That's
Uh-huh.
so true. It was so, yeah, I know that
Mhm,
as in the weeks that led up to my wedding, I was dumbfounded. It felt
mhm.
like, wait a second, the idea of dropping Sullivan Sullivan had been just such a part of me. And I had so
Right.
much pride. Ooh, I'm hearing an
Yeah.
echo. Uh-oh. Are you hearing that? Okay.
No, I'm not.
Maybe my ancestors are coming through. Yeah, we
They've
like
got
the
something to
Sullivan.
say too.
They're like, yeah, don't you give it up. Give up the Sullivan. Because, like my family, we're also German, Dutch, British, but we celebrate the Irish for some reason. Maybe because it's a little
Mhm,
more raucous and party. I don't know.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
shamrock, shamrock, shamrock. So I've had a lot of Sullivan pride. And
Uh-huh.
I thought when I get married, I want to add to myself. I don't want to take anything
Yeah.
away.
Right.
Why
Yeah, I
would
love
I
that.
why would I want to be less? I want my
Uh-huh.
marriage like I remember somebody saying like in these modern days we don't need to get married like we
Mhm.
did once upon a time. We get
Right.
married because we want to just become more of ourselves. It's like
Mhm.
to just add, like it's not survival that has us get married these days. It's like, well, let's get together
Right.
to thrive and
Yes.
to be more, not less of ourselves. So my middle name used to be Anne. So I thought I'm just going to blend Sullivan. So that's all one word. So I'm not
Okay.
losing even a middle name. Kelly
Okay.
Sullivan
Love
Ann
it.
Walden. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Love it.
long, but
Yeah.
yeah, it felt
Uh-huh.
important to me. And I was thinking, God, it's a really long name. Oh my God. Should I just be my initials KSW? I mean, I
Uh-huh.
use that a lot, but
Uh-huh.
none of it's easy. I would like to just have something a little snippier for it,
Uh-huh.
but it felt important to me to
Yeah. Yeah.
add
Yeah. No,
it.
it sounds more elegant. You're more of an elegant person. You're not a snippy person. So I think it fits you well.
Oh God, at some point I'd like to be somebody that could be just short and sweet and to the point, but for now I'm just the long named person and all that comes
Mhm,
along with it because it is symbolic. And I'm a minister.
mhm,
I marry people and
mhm.
often when we talk about ahead of time like, well, what's that going to be? You're right. For some people it's not even a thought. And
Right. Even
symbolically,
today, even
yes,
now.
even
I mean,
now.
I can understand that a while back, but even now, some people are like, well, I'm just going to change my name, you know?
Yeah, it
So
almost feels
interesting.
it's a little less severe than like Handmaid's Tale, where they, there's of Fred. I am
Uh-huh.
like that's my new name. I'm of
Uh-huh.
him. I
Uh-huh.
don't have any like what? Like of that person?
Right.
You know,
Well, do you know, like on that note, the prefix MRS, Mrs., the correct, etiquette wise, correct way to use it is to do Mrs., the man's name, and his last name, because Mrs. means the wife of. So, like if I were to say I'm Mrs. Melanie Murphy, that would etiquetely be incorrect because I'm not the wife of Melanie Murphy. I'd have to be Mrs. Dennis Nyhan. So it really like makes the woman completely invisible, you know? And yeah, so it is kind of like that, Handmaid's Tale,
yeah.
a little bit more than you realize.
It's it's interesting, and even because I'm a dream person, and so I'm so
Yes.
aware of symbolism and the symbolism of words and names and things like that. And so there
Mhm,
is something that's encoded, and it is harder for women
mhm.
to claim themselves and to stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny. I was telling somebody along like years ago, I really need to like stand up for myself more. She said, no, you don't. No, you're fine in that department. Like, please don't do any more standing up for yourself. Like, okay, I guess I'm doing pretty
That's nice.
good
Yeah.
in putting
That's
myself
a
out
compliment,
there,
I
but
think.
what's that?
I think that's a compliment. Uh-huh.
I guess so, but I'm like,
You standing
but
up
I
for
feel
yourself.
like there's a lot more room. There's a lot more to express. And isn't that what we came here for? To be
Mhm,
the fullness of ourselves and to
mhm,
not just be content with little crumbs and little scraps and like, so it feels
mhm,
symbolic. So I
mhm.
performed a wedding this past summer for a couple I'm very close with. And in fact, Aspen is the reason I know Sue Shapiro, which is how I got connected to you. So it all ties back in.
Okay.
So shout
Yeah,
out to Sue
right.
Shapiro.
Yeah.
Shout out to Aspen Mattis, now Aspen Wilder. So she and her husband, before they got married, decided to blend the letters of their name, their
Hmm.
last names, and it turned out to be they took not all the letters, but most of the letters, and they created a new last name that honored both
Love
of them, and
that.
it's Wilder.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
So they're
Uh-huh.
Mr. and Mrs. Wilder.
Yeah.
Is that
But
cool?
yeah, but it sounds like that's a great fit for them,
For
their
both
union,
of
for their
them.
personality. Yeah.
Neither one of them
Uh-huh.
lose anything because there's letters of their former names in there, but it's
Hmm.
also something new. It's just
Hmm.
like, oh my God, why isn't that the tradition?
Right.
Blend some
Right.
letters, like swish them
Uh-huh.
around and make it a word that
Uh-huh.
affirms your spirit
Right.
or who you aspire to be as a couple.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I love talking about this because there's so many, I love to see it when people are like, oh, yeah. It's kind of like one of those things that it's right there in front of you, but there's still this, I hate to say it, but this patriarchal veil, like,
Yeah.
it's just, and we just need to lift it out,
Right. And
and
it's no one's fault. It's not bad. It's
no,
just this is what we've inherited. So now we get to
right.
stand on the shoulders of the
Uh-huh.
ones who came before. We get to create something new. We get to break through
Mhm.
that little ceiling and do something
Right.
that what reflects the next empowerment of who we are
Yeah.
as women and as wives, as,
Right.
in our partnership and in the world. So I
Yeah.
love that you wrote this beautiful article, and I know you're going to put a
Uh-huh.
link to it beneath this, wherever this video goes.
Okay.
And
Uh-huh.
also tell people where they can find you. You like your website is it melaniemurphy.com or what's the
So I actually go by my birth name, which is Melania. So there's an A
Oh,
at the end of, so it's Melania Murphy. And the reason for that is, well, number one, it's my name, and I've just never gone by that before. There's a whole nother story behind that. But then also because there's usually a lot of Melanie Murphys out there. If you Google
Oh,
Melanie Murphy, there's a lot of Melanie Murphys out there.
even Melanie
So
Murphy, author or writer, there's still a few.
yeah.
So,
In fact, the most famous one, the one that'll come up first, is a author and influencer in Ireland named
okay.
Melanie Murphy.
Okay.
So I go by Melania Murphy when I
Melania.
when I write. But yeah,
Not
so I
Melania, Melania.
correct. That's
Okay.
the German way to say it is Melania.
Melania.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
not Melania.
All right. Okay. We won't
Uh-huh.
go there for now. Right. But
But yeah, so I'm on Instagram and it's actually Melania Joy. Melania Joy. Um
oh, great.
and yeah, and on Facebook, and yeah, the article that I put on Substack, it's an introduction to the book that I'm writing. So I am writing a book about
And
this
it's a book
whole fun
about
topic.
this.
It's all about this idea, and because there's just so many fun stories out there, and again, so many opportunities for people to really personalize their name. And again, there's no right or wrong way to go with a married name. And I'm certainly not here to say every woman should keep her own maiden name, because that may not be what's best for you.
Right,
But
right.
I in fact I just talked to this woman who, she and her husband, when they got married, she took his name, but at the same time they knew that they wanted to create a new name, but they, at the time, they didn't know what it was, so they just put the intention out there and they waited. And but they wanted to, when they have their kids, they wanted it to, their name to represent who they were as a family, what was important to them, as
Mm.
a couple, as a family. And so, yeah, last year they changed her name to uh, Sullivaria, I think it is, but it means to
Ooh.
lift up, because, and they
Oh,
have, but it was just
wow.
so. And so instead of having an anniversary, they had a family versary, and they all got a new name. And so I love that.
Oh, I
I just
love
love,
that.
yeah,
Is
I
the
thought they
book
were
already
fun.
out or it's in the works?
It's in the works.
You
Yes, I'm planning to have it out this year. So
you
yeah,
might
yeah,
have
I'm
to
really
interview
excited about it.
Aspen and
Yes,
Daniel Wilder.
yes, uh-huh,
Yeah, because
yes. I would
it's such a cool story. And the people who married Dana and I,
mhm.
we had three ministers. Because why just
Okay,
have one? We had a
uh-huh,
married couple plus my spiritual counselor, Nirvana, bless his
okay,
soul, on the other side. But Allison and Brooks is also on the other side, my God. But
okay,
when they got married, it was a married couple that married us.
okay.
Her last name was Green, his last name was Barton, and they decided to be Green Barton. So
Oh,
I've
right.
only known them as Allison and Brooks Green Barton.
Hmm.
It's like,
Okay, yeah,
what a beautiful, and
yeah,
her name came first, which I thought was really cool.
yeah,
So,
yeah. It kind of
so
works
many
out
ways
that
to
way,
look at
right?
it. We should be
Yes.
this, Melanie Murphy, you are a trailblazer, and I really appreciate the fact that you are taking the time to tell your story and also to drill into this, what I believe is a cultural phenomenon. And this is the
Yeah,
beginning of it being a real something that is considered. So it at the very least, people say, yeah, I thought about it and I am going to go traditional, old school.
right.
But I thought about it.
Exactly. And as a couple, you kind of think about it. I did this just kind of as an experiment, on Family Feud. It always says we surveyed 100 people, and the survey is, or the answer is. So I
Yes,
thought, wouldn't
yes.
it be fun to ask 100 guys, why don't men typically change their names? And
Oh,
what surprised me in that, well, first of all, it was the tradition. Guys just don't do that, or whatever.
right.
Okay, that's fine. And the second one was fear. There's like a lot of fear-based things, like, what would my family say? I'll disappoint, a lot of things. But number three was, nobody asked me to. And I was like, huh. So there's a lot of men out there who are open to this, but they're like, I just never thought about it that way. We never talked about it. She never asked me, like, so I was surprised at that, there's definitely could be a shift out there. In fact, I'm kind of pushing for a 50-50 split by 2050. 50 men versus 50 women percent,
Oh,
instead of
I
the
love that.
80% who drop their name and take on his name. I think it should be more of a 50-50 split.
A 50-50 split, but 100% considering it ahead of time and making a
Yeah,
choice and
yeah,
not just having it be a default.
right, right. Yeah, yeah.
Honey, this is
I think it's
important.
smart.
And what is that? What will that do to us as a collective subconsciously?
Yes.
I think
I
it's
think
really important.
right, because a lot of people like, what's the big deal? So we're following this tradition. It's been around forever. But when you really look at it, and in my book, we really kind of look at this, you know, uh, women, the bottom line is women don't feel empowered to ask for what they want, and so it's all about empowering women to see themselves as equal to this man they're going to marry. Their ancestry,
Right.
their identity, their culture, everything is it's equal. And so for
Mm,
society, women and men to see the women as equal to the men. Nobody's better than the other. Again, when you take gender out of it, two women, two men, getting married, the gender's taken out of it. They see themselves as equal or their name is, equal. So, but the gender, there's still a lot of the oppression on women, seeing they're less than, they're a step down than the men. So I think, making this small shift on just knowing that your name, your identity is as important to his, I think that's just, it'll make a huge shift in society.
bam. Mic drop on that. Thank you, Melanie Murphy. That was great. I can't
Thank
wait
you,
to see what happens
Kelly.
in 2050. All
That's right.
right. Thank you. Good luck. And I can't, what's the name of the book, by the way? Let's end it with the name of the book. Do you
So
have that?
yeah, the working title that I'm going with right now is Bound by Love, Not Tradition. Empowering Women by Married Name Choices.
Oh, and so it is. All right.